So we're talking about wisdom and everyday wisdom. Every week this month, there'll be some topic with this idea of everyday. So the next week will be everyday worship. And then we'll talk about everyday people, and everyday Savior, and everyday grace. And so maybe some of these concepts that are part of Christianity, that we really need to make them a part of our everyday lives. And wisdom, I think, is a great place to start, because wisdom is so important. And even the scriptures we've read so far from the Proverbs have shown us that, how great wisdom is, how much wisdom can bring into your life. And so we really need to go after wisdom. We want wisdom. So what I want to do here this morning is really do two things. One is reiterate the need that we have in our lives for wisdom. Okay? And then secondly, tell you how to get wisdom. Now, conventional wisdom, conventional thinking is you live, you learn, right? And so a lot of us, we like to rely on experiences to gain wisdom. Experience is definitely a way that we learn, right? We gain wisdom from experience. Sometimes we make decisions and the consequences of those decisions are not always pleasant. And so we learn from those things. And then we call that wisdom. It doesn't always work that way though, right? How many people had a Thanksgiving meal in which you ate too much? Okay. And how many of you, this was the first time this ever happened? No, probably last year, the year before that, you ate too much on Thanksgiving. And you were probably sitting on some couch, watching the end of some football game, struggling to stay awake, thinking, I'm not going to do this next year. Or maybe you didn't have regret. Maybe you thought, oh, this is bliss. This is perfect. But sometimes we have those experiences, and the consequences aren't that great. It's a couple of hours of being uncomfortable. And so we just kind of let that slide. And next year when that holiday rolls around, we kind of give ourselves permission to go ahead and do it again, right? And make that mistake again. Or we might know it's coming, or we forget. We just forget about it, okay? That's what happens to me pretty much anytime I go to the Chinese buffet. I get this mentality. I shut off reason, and I start thinking with my wallet and my eyes. So I say, okay, I paid $6.99 for this buffet. To get my money's worth, I need at least 2 plates. Right? So if I can squeeze that third plate in, I'm ahead, and if I can eat an ice cream cone at the end, then I have beat the system, right? And I feel good about that. And I feel good about that until I get into the car, and I'm like, oh man, why did I eat all that food? And then I get home, and I'm just drinking glass and glass of water, and I'm like, oh, that's so salty. Next time I go to the buffet, I'm gonna do a plate of vegetables first. And how often does that happen? So sometimes we live and we learn, and sometimes we live and we don't learn. Or we learn and we don't really care what we learn, right? We just kind of let that slide. If you think about it, how many of you right now would say that today you make better decisions than you did 2 years ago? Okay? How about you make better decisions than you made 5 years ago? Okay? Most of you, I make better decisions because we learn from our experiences. We learn from life. And so we know that there's a need for that, and we're grateful for that, right? A lot of times, sometimes, that's what we talk about when we talk about regret, is that's me saying, I wish I could take the wisdom I have now. So that's what all of this is talking about wisdom. I wish I could take the wisdom that I have right now and go back 5 years. And I wish 5 years ago I had the wisdom that I have now. Because then I would have made a couple of different decisions. And so, what I want to bring up in the greatness of the Proverbs, and the Proverbs are written to all different audiences, but one of the things that's brought up is that it's written to young people, is this idea of, I think that it's greater to learn through trust than to learn through experience. Now, experience is important, and there's great truths that we learn from experience. But I remember a conversation I had with somebody in college, and you may disagree with me at the end of this, but the basic idea was this classic example of a child who reaches up on the stovetop and burns their hand on one of the hot burners, okay? They've been told by their parents not to do it. They've been told what will happen, the consequences. You will get burned. It will hurt. You will cry. And yet the child's curiosity gets the best of them, and they reach up and they touch the burn. So there's a couple ways that that child can learn a lesson. One is in disobedience. They choose to deny what they've been taught, what they've been told, and they still want to go and they touch it. They touch it, they get burned, it hurts, and they cry. So all the things that they were taught were verified. So these are important lessons. Because now hopefully the child is thinking, oh, whoever taught me this, mom, dad, grandma, grandpa, whoever told me these truths, I can trust them. They weren't lying to me. It wasn't some kind of trick because there was like some secret candy that was hidden under the stove eye that I might have been able to get. They really had my best interest in mind. So they can learn that lesson. And he can learn, I don't want to do that again. Because that hurt. It made me cry. Now, is that a better experience? Is that a better learning experience than the child, that when they're told not to touch it, they obey and they trust their parent that taught them that? I've heard arguments, I've heard people say that no, that the disobedience actually gives a truer and deeper understanding of what the truth is, because they actually felt the pain. But pain is not something, I can recall that I had pain, but when I recall that pain, it doesn't bring back the pain, right? If I remember, I remember when I put my hand on that stove eye, it hurt a lot. When I think of that and remember it, my hand doesn't burn the same way that it burned on that day. So I think what Proverbs is about is saying, you know what, we can learn a lot of things by just listening to truth, by absorbing wisdom that is around it, that God sends to us, that God puts in the mouths of righteous people and wise people. We should listen to those things and so not make the same mistakes that they made, or not make the mistakes that we're being warned against. And it's no less of a wisdom. It's not less true, or it's not less deep because you learned in that way. Okay? And in fact, one thing that it provides you is a lot less regret. You can say, I'm glad that I did it the right way the first time. And so what we're going to talk about is, well, how to get wise. And the first thing is, you have to really want it. You have to really desire wisdom. And I say that, how that relates to my analogy with the child and stove eye and all that, is because even though some people argue that the child that actually got burned has a deeper understanding, it's my experience in life, if the children get burned, they tend to be the ones that keep putting their hand back on the stove eye. Right? It's like the people that mess up, the people that make that foolish decision, and it's so blatantly obvious to everybody. Wow, did you see that? Did you see the tears? Did you see the crying? Did you hear the screams? That child, and then it's the next week the kids, it's like, what is wrong with this kid? Why won't they learn? And we know adults like that, right? We have a hard time figuring out, why can't they get it in their head? Why can't this truth be absorbed by them? And it's not because they can't learn it. It's because they don't care to learn it. It's whatever they're reaching after. They've come to a point where they accept whatever that consequence might be, because they just want to reach. They don't want wisdom. They don't love it. And so some of the things that the Bible talks about right in the beginning, I love one of these verses is so true. It says basically in Proverbs chapter 4 and verse 7, it says, the beginning of wisdom, this is so profound, I love it so much. Proverbs chapter 4 verse 7, the beginning of wisdom is to get wisdom. Beginning of wisdom. See, it seems like you're not supposed to make arguments like that, right? But that's what it is. The beginning of wisdom. If you want to be wise, you've got to go after it. You've got to chase after it. You've got to want it. Another scripture that I liked is in Proverbs chapter 8. We'll, if you want to just open up to the book of Proverbs, we'll kind of dance around and bounce around there. So Proverbs chapter 8 in verse 10. Here's another one that talks about the greatness and goodness of wisdom. What is it that you chase after? What is it that you desire? This is what Proverbs 8:10 says. It says, choose my instruction instead of silver, knowledge rather than choice gold. For wisdom is more precious than rubies, and nothing you desire can compare with her. You know, we sing a song that's based on those verses. And we talk about God. That He is more precious than silver, more costly than gold. And then He said, nothing I desire can compare with you. The Bible uses that language talking about wisdom. That is how great wisdom is. No matter what you have to do, go after wisdom. As the scripture, and actually I think it is in chapter 4, it talks about that. Verse 7, wisdom is supreme, therefore get wisdom. Though it costs all you have, get understanding. Okay? I might mention this later, but one of the great things as you read through Proverbs is you'll read through Proverbs and say, oh wait, Jesus said something like that. I mean, when you read that, does that not bring to mind some of those parables that Jesus told about the pearl of great price and the treasure in the field? That, hey, this is what the kingdom of God is like. And these things are so valuable that when you find them, you're going to go and you're going to sell everything you own to come back and get this. Well, when Solomon and some of his contemporaries were writing the Proverbs and recording the Proverbs that they had heard since they were children, that was their view of wisdom. Wisdom is so great, wisdom is so supreme, that if you could have the opportunity to sell everything you own to obtain wisdom, you should take that deal. Because that's how important wisdom is. If you get wisdom, you'll get all that back plus. And so, if we understand the need for wisdom, and if you say, yeah, I want to be wiser, I want to make better decisions, I want to have less regret, then step one is to actually want wisdom. Because there's a lot of people that want the result of wisdom, but aren't willing to pay the price for wisdom. I just want to do things my way. So the second part of that is, if you really want wisdom, then you need to know what the source of wisdom is, okay? And so it's about looking to God for help. It's about looking to the Lord for that guidance. Because so often, where do we look? Oprah? The magazine on the stand at the grocery store? I mean, where is it that we're looking for? The latest song that came out by somebody that really touches my heart, though. You know, I can really relate to it. But is that our source for wisdom? I think most people, the source of their wisdom is their own heart. Well, what do I think is true? What do I know is right? And that's what, but if we really want wisdom, if we really want, we need to love it and want it and go after it, but we need to know where to go. All right? Or else we're going to be drawing from the wrong well and drinking the wrong water. And so it's all about looking to God first. Going through the Proverbs, there's several things that kind of talk about this. The most famous one is Proverbs chapter 1 in verse 7. And it says, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge, but fools despise wisdom and discipline. So kind of that starting point. If you want wisdom, it starts with the fear of the Lord. Now, I think that these two things, 1 and 2, are probably equal. You could start either place. Because if you honestly and truly have a fear of God and get to know God and grow to trust God, then an automatic part of that relationship is that you're going to start to love wisdom. Because when you love something as much as you should love God, as you love someone as much as you should love God, then you start to love the things that they love. All right? How many married people are here that are interested in something that you are only interested in because your spouse is interested in it? Okay? That on your own, if you had never met them, if you had never been with them, you would have never gotten into this hobby or watching that television show. All right? And yet, you do, because you love them, you start to be interested in the things that they have. You start to love the things that they love. And so, God is the supplier of all good wisdom. And so when we relate to Him and know Him, it's automatic that we're going to want to have wisdom. We're going to want to be more like Him as we grow in that relationship. So we've got this idea of the fear of the Lord. In chapter 3, verses 5 and 6, which were read earlier, talks about trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. So it goes a little deeper. The beginning of knowledge, the beginning of wisdom starts with fearing God. But we need to go beyond fearing God. We can't just be people that run around and say, fearing God. It grows into a trust. And then on into chapter 9 and verse 10, it talks about the knowledge of God. It says this in chapter 9 verse 10, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, and the knowledge of the Holy One is understanding. So it's not just we fear God, but we know God, and we trust God. And in that relationship comes the gift of wisdom. And that's what James chapter 1 says. If any of you lacks wisdom, ask God. Not look up in the newspaper what today's horoscope is. Right? Not crack open your fortune cookie and get your lucky numbers. If any of you lacks wisdom, ask God. So we need to, if we want to be on this journey, we want wisdom, we got to love it, we need to know where the good and pure wisdom comes from. It comes from God. He needs to be our source. All right, so we love wisdom. We look to the Lord. We listen to wisdom. This sounds kind of odd. But there's a couple of times in the book of Proverbs where wisdom is personified. Wisdom is made to be like a woman. It's crying out in the streets. And there's this analogy that's made. There's this man that's just kind of walking along the path. He's walking through a town, and wisdom is there. And that's standing on a hill, crying out to this man, saying, "Come to me, and if you want these things, riches and glory and honor, and if you want your paths to be straight, and you want a good life, then come to me and listen to me and follow my ways." And so the man is just kind of walking along, and he's making his way towards wisdom. And on his way, there's a temptress. It's kind of lounging in a window, scantily clad, doesn't even say a word to him, just motions over to him. How many, just think about the young men you know, how many young men are going to keep that, I'm going to wisdom, here I go, leave me alone, at least would be distracted by that woman. What's she doing? How come she isn't saying anything? Maybe I should stop and ask her, right? And so we get distracted by the things that is the great divide. Wisdom's calling out to us, but there's so many other things in this world that distract us. So many things that might seem to be more pleasant than wisdom. They might offer even similar promises, but her way leads to death and destruction. Her way leads down to the grave. And so we need to listen to wisdom. And it's not just specifically wisdom that we're listening to. Chapter 8, verses 1 through 6 is one of those places that does a great job of personifying wisdom. I'll go ahead and read these 6 verses, and then I want to look at a couple of scriptures, I think in chapter 10. All right. Does not wisdom call out? This is chapter 8. Does not understanding raise her voice? On the heights along the way where the paths meet, she takes her stand. Besides the gate leading into the city, at the entrances she cries aloud. To you, O man, I call out. I raise my voice to all mankind. You who are simple, gain prudence. You who are foolish, gain understanding. Listen, for I have worthy things to say. I open my lips to speak what is right. My mouth speaks what is true. For my lips detest wickedness. All the words of my mouth are just. None of them is crooked or perverse. And so we have a voice that rings out in the world. A voice that is, the source is God. And He is giving us wisdom, and it cries out to us and calls out to us. So much of that wisdom we have recorded in these pages of your Holy Bible. So we need to be aware of that. If you flip over to chapter 10, there's some other people that give this wisdom and provide this wisdom. Okay? And you can probably think, if you kind of personalize this, who in your own life. We all know those people. I hope everybody has at least one person that when you think of a good Christian life, somebody that's lived it, somebody that thinks they are wise, they've got a godly wisdom, that you can think of someone that you know, someone that's been in your life. This is what some of these scriptures in chapter 10 say. Verse 11, the mouth of the righteous is a fountain of life, but violence overwhelms the mouth of the wicked. Verse 20 and 21. The tongue of the righteous is choice silver, but the heart of the wicked is of little value. The lips of the righteous nourish many, but fools die for lack of judgment. And lastly, verse 31. The mouth of the righteous brings forth wisdom, but a perverse tongue will be cut out. And so, how can I get wisdom? How can I grow in wisdom? Well, it's about wanting it and longing for it. It's about looking to God, who is ultimately the source. And it's also about listening, being able to discern the sources that are kind of calling out to us in this world. All the information that we're getting here, say, what is actually wisdom? And listening to that and not being distracted by all the other things. And the last thing is really kind of looking and learning from the rest of creation. Okay, so Proverbs does this a couple of different times. And we'll read through those. You can turn back to chapter 6. And where what Proverbs are, is Proverbs are truths. But what they are even more so are solid observations. Okay? So it's not like every single thing that's said in the Proverbs you can say, oh yes, 100% of the time, that is the case. Okay? What this person is, they're just kind of sitting back, they're observing the world. Now some of these things are definitely 100%. So you think you observe the world and you see something happen. Say, oh yeah, 99% of the time that this person does this, that this is going to happen. So we just kind of take that in. If we want to gain wisdom, we listen to people that are wise, we listen to people that are righteous, but then we also become like them. We also become observers. We should also be able to sit back and kind of look at the way that things work and learn from them. So in Proverbs chapter 6, we see a couple of those things in verses 5 and 6. Free yourself like a gazelle from the hand of the hunter, like a bird from the snare of the fowler. Go to the ant, you sluggard. Consider its ways and be wise. So the slug is contrasted to the ant. Hey, if you are a lazy bum, if you are a sluggard, you need to look at the ant and see how the ant works. See how the ant lives. We need to be more like that. And so it's kind of like looking to see what's happening in nature. That's brought up, and we'll look at just one more of these examples in chapter 30. Proverbs chapter 30, verses 24 through 31. 4 things on earth are small, yet they are extremely wise. Ants are creatures of little strength, yet they store up their food in the summer. Conies are creatures of little power, yet they make their homes in the crags. Locusts have no king, yet advance together in ranks. A lizard can be caught with a hand, yet is found in kings' palaces. And so kind of looking at these things, all right? An ant is very small. It uses its knowledge. It knows its weakness. The ant figures that it's not going to be able to gather all that food in the wintertime. So it goes down to the conies are these small creatures that they are weak. And so they find the protection in where they live. They find that they make their homes in the crags. And so it's kind of looking at, look, as human beings, we can look at nature and we can see how these other creatures that God has made, how they live and they operate, and we can learn something from them. So if we want to be people that gain wisdom, we have to long for it. We have to look to God for it. We need to listen to wisdom and be able to really find those out. Who are the righteous people in your life? Who are the wise people that you can really count on that what they're going to say, how they're going to advise you is going to be true and in accord with God's word. And then we can also be learners and just observe the world around us, observe nature. Okay? We need wisdom. We need to gain in wisdom and understanding. Because we do want to be able to say every single time, yes, I make better choices than I did last year. I make better decisions than I did yesterday. Because every day, I'm exposing myself and I'm going after wisdom. I'm putting it in my life. I'm absorbing it. I'm lapping it up. I'm becoming more and more wise. And so I'm making decisions and I'm not having to deal with the regret that some of my neighbors are having to deal with. I'm not having to go through those things. I can come out on the other side.